Okay, we're up. Yep, we're live. Thank you for being here. It's nice to meet you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I read a little bit about your background, and I like exploring some of your background and these topics. Like some of my most fun conversations are being this type of work that you're doing. And
Mhm.
I'm not trying to steal your thunder, so I'm kind of being very vague. So before we go any further, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background of who you are and what you do, and then we can take a quick dive into the fun stuff.
Okay. My name's Naranjan. I came into the world of spirituality because sometimes throughout life, you just fall into roles, experiences, and life lessons. And it ultimately puts you in a place of this feels right, this feels right, and this feels right. So, in this juncture in my life, this is what I'm here to do.
Mm. So how did you find this world of spirituality? What happened?
I've always been in a place of curiosity and very inquisitive about what happens on the other side when we die.
Why have you always, yeah, ever since you were little, you've always thought that?
Always had this very, very interesting curiosity and asked my parents, my elders, my community people. And at the beginning, it was very much like, why are you asking this question?
Yeah.
Come play with your toys. What are you doing? So it'd be that kind of question. And then as I got older, I would be able to research and delve into conversations with other people outside of my community and unravel pieces of that, which made it more enriching and more fulfilling for me to
Mhm.
learn and expand more about what is on the other side.
So growing up and asking these questions and wondering, what is the difference? Or did you, I guess that's what I'm asking for. Did you ask yourself the difference in understanding the concept of different philosophical beliefs or religious beliefs, and maybe why they think that this is what happens after you pass, and or this does or doesn't happen, and this version or this group over here thinks it's something completely different? Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Um, Perhaps it was all triggered when my dad passed away when I was 8. Potentially, I don't know for sure. But what I know is later on in my teens, as a young adult, I started asking these questions. And I think that's probably pretty natural when you see that you've been raised by one parent.
Sure. Well, even when you're 8 years old and seeing something like that at the young age, you would think, because I never had lost anybody that young, but I'm just and looking at it the way through your eyes, I think I would be, wondering the same thing. If people couldn't give me a direct answer, it would just spark my curiosity even more.
Right.
Yeah. And
Absolutely. And then I was raised in a religion that really offered more insight on other religions. I was raised in the Sikh faith from India originally, but I was born and raised in Britain. And the examples and the shares that they would offer during these teachings were related to other religions, the Islam religion, the Buddhism, and the Christian faith. So a lot of the big religions would be referenced in that. And then I knew that I could lean into other religions and find what the true essence of it is that they're all trying to say. What is this?
what, what
So,
what did you find out?
well, removing all the cultural pieces, all the rituals, all the dogma, all of that stringent, man made, imposed version was regardless of what you call it, universe, God, source, they all harbor it, they
Mm,
all have it.
that makes sense. Yeah. Everyone seems to have some sort of, I guess, higher power that they're looking at, except for certain cases. But and also, with that said, I guess I'm wondering that in each of all these cases, it seems like they all seem to have almost the same kind of structure where all of it seems to be like, hey, if you just be a good person in life based on these principles, you'll go to the divine, or you'll be somewhere in the afterlife. You just don't, just sit into the earth and hope for the best or whatever, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it's just like, and that's one thing that when people get into these relig- religious debates and fights and arguments or whatever, but it's just like, well, really, if you think about it, they're all kind of saying the same thing. Like, hey, just be a good person, just maybe in a different view, I guess, or different, they're wording it different. And I don't know if people look at it like that. I mean, I don't even know where that came to me about, but I guess when you start to view them, it's just like, hey, just be nice, basically, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, with your work and with this topic, I mean, do you get a lot of, I guess, feedback or negative criticism just from talking about this stuff constantly, or no?
From the religious perspective,
Yeah, even a religious or philosophical perspective on, thinking about the way you think about things and wondering, like, people wondering if you're wrong in what you think, I guess.
mhm. Not necessarily, because I can appreciate anybody's vantage point or viewpoint of where they're coming from.
Mm,
So, and what my biggest premise is, I'm not saying to anybody, my philosophy and my understanding and teaching is the way. You must follow it. No, no. It's okay, you've got a perspective, that's great. But does it align to this? Are we really saying the same thing, but maybe the semantics of words and the language and interpretation is just a little bit different? But we're really saying the same thing using different words?
mm. So who is your target? I mean, who do you help? I mean, what type of people come to you to, try to get their anxiety, depression, does anything lift it off of them? I mean, is it just more people just stressed out on life with work, or is it just people from all over, or how does it work? Just people going through things? What?
I would say the majority of people who come to me are what I would often say is at the end of their tether.
How do you mean?
Like, like it's the last straw.
Uh,
They've done and tried therapy, psychiatry, counseling, coaching. They've tried, their own parish if they come from a religion, or if they're not and they're a little skeptic about what is all this spirituality and science business. I have no idea what this is. But life is taking a toll. It's beating them down and feeling like it's really hard, but it's not really meant to be this hard, surely. With
hmm,
all the burdens and stress of what life should look like, those are the folks who come to me and who want more. They don't want the go to work and come home, take
yes.
care of everybody else, and not take care of me. I'm at the bottom of the list, whether you identify as a man or a woman, doesn't matter. I've had both come through and work with me. So individuals who've really come to a place of they're tired, they're exhausted and overwhelmed with life.
Mm. And what is usually the first step? Say for example, I want to come and talk to you, and I'm tired of life. What is the first step that we do here, and how do we go from point A to point B and to make me a happier person?
Well, I don't do anything. I just
Oh.
hold space and support you through that process. Ultimately, you're the one doing the work, and I'm going to ask those probing and difficult questions,
Mm,
give you and invite you to look at things from a different perspective. I often use the analogy of we go through life and we have experiences, be it you go to school, you get beaten up in the playground, to you end a relationship with your first boyfriend or girlfriend, to getting fired at a job, and just life experiences. And every life experience will create an emotion. And that emotion becomes so heavy on our hearts
yes.
that it's like carrying that as a rock in our backpack. So I
Mm,
call life as like a backpack. That emotional experience we put in our backpack. And before we know it, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even later, we've got a heavy load that we're carrying and is weighing on us physically.
Mm,
We're
that's a good
like,
point.
why do I
Yeah.
feel so old? Why do I feel so heavy? What's going on here?
Yeah, and people don't realize how much it's adding up and how much it's actually playing in on their daily life and just their mental, I guess, their psyche, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that, so they just keep kind of going through life until is it almost that they just kind of just drop and just finally just something bad completely happens and they realize, okay, well, I didn't realize I was under this much stress, but it all comes out in some way, rather just
Yes.
something's big or small, right? And that's when they
Absolutely.
say, okay, I need to go talk to somebody.
And most of the time, I've seen it come out where people come to where the physical ailments start to kick in. Diseases start to show up. Um, Depression shows up. Anxiety shows up. Relationship bad after another. The pattern shows up. But the physical ailments of it start showing up, and people go, okay, I got to sort this out.
And I think I read that you seem to dive into the core karmic issues. Does that sound right?
I
And
do, yes.
okay, and I'm pretty new with that term, I guess, or even just that statement right there. So enlighten not only me but the audience too, what exactly what you mean by that.
Well, I'm a believer that you, as Chris, who is incarnated today,
Okay.
you have aspects of all the other lives that you've had on this planet and other planets, but all the future lives that you will potentially have, all different timelines. Because the other philosophy is all time is at one moment, which is a bit of a, I don't want to throw you off, but time is happening all at the same time. So
Okay.
all the other parts of Chris you have access to today. So this is under the premise of you understand what reincarnation is.
Okay.
So we've been here before. Okay, so maybe in another lifetime you was a man living in Spain,
Nice.
hypothetically.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That sounds good.
So you were a man living in Spain and you had this whole life. But some of those experiences, good, bad, and ugly, you have access to today. So all those lifetimes that we've all had, and many of us have had many lives on this planet, Mother Earth, they all come together today, right now in this opportunity that we have called life. We have access to all of them.
So, and I want to talk about how to get that access, but and I'm wondering that there's been some instances in my life where I've kind of felt connected to something, or wondering if I was born in the wrong era, so to speak, or wondering if it's like, or like, and I guess what I'm getting at, there's some cultures like Greek mythology and the Viking mythology and stuff like that. That I don't know if it's I'm just truly interested in, and then like when I say connected, or it's just like, hey, this is really kind of cool, and like, why do I like this so much? And was this something in like a past life? And I'm not saying I fully am 100% like, yeah, I had past lives or whatever, but I'm on the fence about it just because it's like, I like talking about it and I like wondering, I like exploring these ideas, and and I immediately don't like to write things off. I mean, because like, hey, hold on, there might be something to this. But when
Mhm.
things like that happen, it's just like, hey, what, maybe I did live in Greece. Who knows, in a past life, or maybe you know, I don't know, Spain, and I've always liked Spain. I've always heard it's real pretty. I've never been there, but I was like, "Ooh, she said Spain. Wait, is that weird, or is that just a coincidence, or what?" I mean, is it thing? And I think a lot of people go through things like that, and they find like little things they've been connected to, and just that, but they kind of maybe immediately write them off just because sometimes you're not supposed to think that way, right? Does that kind of make sense? Yeah,
That totally makes sense.
yeah.
And I would say all those little tip offs that we get, be it that we're drawn to certain things, be it the foods, places, people, things, artifacts, locations we get drawn to, are a tip off that we've more than likely had a lifetime there.
Mm,
as also if we are repulsed by a situation, place, people, thing. So is there a place there, for instance, if we talk about travel, a place where you probably are not very drawn to go to? Doesn't seem too appetizing. So that is equally an opportunity to delve into what happened there that's causing that repulsion for you to not look at something.
So, all right. So going back a little bit, what you said, that when you access these memories or access these feelings and stuff, is that when you see these artifacts or see like a drawn to a destination for whatever reason, like, oh, I really want to go to, I don't know, South America or something. Yeah, Spain, whatever. I forgot what we said.
Stick with Spain.
Yeah, so Spain's good. And that's kind of how we start to access these.
So what happens is as we become more aware of what we're drawn to or repulsed to, it'll evoke an emotion. And as we listen and watch and observe the emotion that it evokes in us, it will then give us more insight. Like, am I now being an advocate for whatever's happening because I'm feeling a strong push or an anger or an aggression around something? The emotion itself will be the bigger reveal to the relationship to that lifetime, but more importantly, to the opportunity to heal what it's really divulging. So while it's really interesting and very enticing to say, hey, Chris, you've had a lifetime in Spain, and actually, yes, he was probably a Viking too, and maybe somewhere in England. And it's kind of tantalizing to have that information unfold. But where we are energetically right now on this planet, all those little details kind of don't matter.
That's a really good point. But before we go into that, do you ever find yourself connected with other civilizations or anything that you have? Like what are they? I'm very interested.
Oh, many of them. How long we got, Chris?
Well, yeah, absolutely. We got plenty of time now. Yeah. I mean, like those were the first two that I came to that seemed to stick out the most for me. And when you say you have many of them, ooh, I mean, that's like, wow. Like even when you said planets earlier, that, and that never occurred to me just because I've never even thought that. Just like, oh, wait, I could have lived onto another planet, but it's cool to think about because, like I said, I like exploring things like that.
Well, ultimately, for us to be evolved species as we are as humans, the insight, the wisdom, and the knowledge that we come with comes from other lifetimes, but it also comes from other planets. Some planets were more evolved, others were lesser. And those get activated within us as we do certain things. Whether you get drawn to AI or whether you get drawn to being more engaged with planets and gardening and periculture and all that, like they tip how we actually move through life are huge signs of who we truly have been. Huge signs.
Yeah. It's funny how you just said getting drawn to AI, because I've been researching that a lot the past 2 weeks just because it's been a big buzzword in the news lately. And I've been kind of experimenting with it and playing with it, and it's neat. And it makes me wonder even more, like, where does our future go with this newish technology? So, and it's called Chat GPT, if you wonder what I'm talking about. Like, but it seems to be because a lot of, and this is off topic from us, but just so you know that and the audience knows that it's an AI, and you can go in there and basically ask it any question, like you're Googling something, right? And you can tell it to write me a one-page paper on Greece about within, tell me the Greek mythology and this, stuff like that, and cite sources and things like that. And I'll write it within a matter of minutes, and schools starting to outlaw it and stuff. So anyway, but I've been like, wow, this is this type of technology we have right here, where I can literally do something within like, as we're talking right here, I could say like, here, write me a paper on spirituality. And it was just like, let me see what it's got to say. So
that's interesting, but perhaps a little scary at the same time.
Exactly, right? Just because like as you said something earlier about us evolving and how our race has gotten from point A to point B. I mean, now from point C, I mean, are we going to become, less thought leaders or less thinking about things where we're just going to depend on, and I don't want this whole podcast to be about artificial intelligence, but just, are we going to be thinking like that just because why do I have to think about, if I lived a life on another planet or actually did have a past life in Spain when I can just ask artificial intelligence and whatever it says, I'm going to believe. Right.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's just like, all right, cool. It says it. It's smart. I know. They know it. So who cares?
But then it's trusting. Who will we really? And yeah, I don't want to take it too off topic from where you want to go with this. But who are we really handing over our power to by saying, okay, it's going to write the paper and I trust it. Whereas when we tap into this beautiful thing called our heart and our own intuition and create a balance between the heart, the mind, the body, and the spirit, create that union, we tap into something that is really difficult to capture from a scientific level.
Never thought about that. So, yeah, because when you say scientific level, I mean, are you really saying like what is a person actually feeling compared to does a machine even feel anything? I mean, does it really have a conscience? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm saying as human beings, we have been designed like this for a reason, with a free will consciousness and access to greater consciousness. We talked about it at the beginning. God, divine, source, higher power, whatever you want to call it. We have access to that like this. But when we hand that over to a machine, depending on who's programmed it, depending on who's controlled it, depending on what their motive and intentions are, it can be skewed very quickly.
And that's a good thing that you just brought up. Do you think, and I'm assuming, do you believe in free will or do you believe in determinism?
Free will.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? You just think we're free to make all of our decisions whenever we want to, and there's no reason why or pre-made plan for us to maybe act on certain things, I guess?
So, for instance, if I said to you, Chris, you had a lifetime as a Viking in England, and if you go to XYZ location, you might be able to heal a wound that you experienced at that lifetime.
Yeah.
Which, if you heal that wound, this portion of your life here today, in where you live, can help resolve certain challenges that you might be presenting in today's life, and for your future generations and for your ancestors and all that stuff. But you can turn and say, yeah, thanks, no thanks. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
That's free will.
I agree, but it's not predetermined in some, like, where does thoughts come from, right? Where does anything come from? But it's not just happening from some outside source that all of a sudden, oh, it's going to go up in here through the brain. Now, okay, now you need to go think about healing in England, right? Like there's something that's taken me to have that thought and making me like, okay, I need to go do this, even though it's making me think I have free will. But it's like, oh, this is predetermined. And even if I try to ignore it in some fashion, like, oh, I'm just going to go to California and live out. But somehow through life, through whatever, I end up in England. And I'm not saying, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate here. Just, yeah.
And that's all. Fair. All right.
Because it's cool. It's fun. It's a fun conversation. And do you know who Sam Harris is?
I do. I guess.
Because I think he has a book or two on free will versus determinism. And I can't remember his stance on it, but I remember just listening to it. And it was it's just like kind of like mind blowing for me. Mm-hmm. Neat. This is neat.
Yeah, his is a little bit different. I've not heard much of his, but yeah, he has come into my awareness. So my perspective doesn't have to be right, but my perspective is the thoughts and how possibly life is going to evolve for you, even though we've got free choice, is based on your soul wanting to witness the experience called life. And it's going to go, okay, I want to witness abandonment. I want to witness guilt, shame, anxiety, imposter syndrome, and all these other emotions that we all have.
Yeah.
I want to have those experiences as a human being. What does that look like? And if I do that, then I'll be able to heal all these other lifetimes. And then when we make deals, we make so-called contracts with individuals, our parents, siblings, partners, friends, we have contracts and say, okay, you're going to teach me this. Okay. Husband, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, you're going to break my heart because of this, this, and this. All right, deal. We come here in incarnation, we have those experiences. So that thought originally, from my perspective, comes from the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is where it resides all of these opportunities our soul wants to experience.
But it may be
come through as a thought.
But in our past lives, so could that also shape these experiences too? I know
it shapes every single experience.
Yeah, we may have touched a little bit on that earlier, but and just thinking, for me, just thinking about having a past life in Spain or wherever it was, and this like shaping my life into, like you said, imposter syndrome, like that just kind of came on my awareness, maybe a few years ago, and I never really knew anything about it until I think I either heard on a podcast somebody talking about it or just reading about it, and I was like, wait, that's what they call that. Interesting. Yeah. And that, and going, and I don't wish for people to go through, certain bad things in life, like, being guilty or feeling sadness or things like that. But I wonder if going through those things help shape the person into a future life, and that's what, and maybe somebody in a past life, you never were able to experience imposter syndrome or guilt or sadness or whatever. So it's, in this life, we got to become more aware of it and know how to handle it and, know what it is, and not just, when it does hit you, you can either, fall down, or you can either work your way through it and heal from it. And that way make your life better, right? And be happy, like kind of what you've been talking about. So I guess, that was my thing, was just that they play a lot in our roles today and maybe in our future, and we don't think about it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for somebody, for like me, who just even said that imposter syndrome coming up on my awareness, how can somebody learn to identify and understand these karmic issues that are coming about them? Or is it just something they have to go through life with, or is it just something that sitting down and talking with somebody like you and just kind of figuring out from there? How do you become more aware of them for somebody who doesn't know? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Is to be mindful of what is the dialogue that's going on in our mind. What's that narrative that's happening and that's showing up in our lives, be it through relationships or be it through you get a promotion and second guessing yourself that you can actually do it. Observing your emotions, observing how you're feeling, observing what you're talking to yourself.
Yeah.
So perhaps the key word is going to be observe and be aware. The more we can be aware of our environment, our physical environment, but our internal environment and dialogue, then we can be much kinder to ourselves, much more compassionate and gentle with that dialogue, because ultimately, whichever way you want to slice it, if you will, if we are an aspect of this divine power, God, source, light, we're not here to suffer. Such unconditional love for ourselves, but the people around us. It may sound a bit hokey, it may sound a little bit out there, that's going on out there. But in the same token, it's if we are a true aspect of God, source light, universal higher power, and if that is a place of unconditional love, all the other stuff are reminders that we have access to this unconditional love. So do I want to sit in that imposter syndrome? Or do I want to say, actually, no, I actually do love myself. Let me just go here for a second. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm going to sit in that. I don't think I'm going to hold on to that rock for much longer.
Yeah. And I don't think it sounds out there or very hokey. I think maybe, and this is kind of the cool thing about podcasting is that, maybe 10, 20 years ago, if you were to have these type of conversations, especially in depending on the room that you were in, you were automatically be labeled as,
Sure.
yeah, a weirdo, like for a better word, like, oh, don't talk to them. They're weird. They don't really know anything about anything. But now, with podcasting and listening to different views about, spirituality, these issues, living in different lives and future lives and different planets, that these conversations are okay. They're okay to have. They're okay to explore. They're okay to talk about. Like I'm not saying it's a cool thing, but it's that it's more acceptable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it gives people an alternative way of thinking rather than just, going down their daily life, like you said, with those rocks in the back and like, oh, wait, I'm glad I stumbled onto a podcast that people were talking about this stuff just because I thought I was the only one.
Right.
Yeah. And now we got someone like you who's here to help, and where it's like almost a safe space where I could feel like, ooh, let me reach out to her and she'll help me and guide me through whatever I need to, and at least give me a start to something. It starts the conversation. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. But if somebody like that, once they become aware of certain issues and starting like, okay, I want to seek out, like yourself to help me out or whatever, is there tools or techniques like meditation, therapy, something like that you kind of, or even like that you do yourself, to help people to get a start into their healing?
So there is, for myself, I do meditation, but that's part of my practice. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else.
Sure.
And my form of meditation is very much sitting in stillness, like just sitting quietly, and even just listening to your heartbeat. That's it. You don't have to listen to a recording, do some fancy poses, do any deep breath work or anything like that. Just to come home and find that comfort in your own heartbeat and sit with that. And if you can sit with that, and the more you expand into that awareness of your own heart, the more your heart will open and expand. So that's a form of meditation, as to is mindfulness. So mindfulness, whether I'm going for a walk, is just being very present at that moment.
Yes. Has doing this type of work, I know we said earlier the podcast, when you were 8 years old, you lost your father, and that's kind of where you started asking questions and becoming, asking questions and wondering different, I guess, from other people. But and doing this work, do you feel like it's changed you as a person, and like how you were before at 8 years old and how you are now?
100%. 100%, Chris. I could sit here and tell you, I probably don't even recognize the same person of who I was this time last year.
Really?
Not to say I'm a completely different person, but there are aspects of that unlayering of the onion that we do
Yes.
when we do the emotional work. And I can tell you, this time last year, there were some other rocks in my backpack that I needed to offload. But it took me a year to do it. And I can say, oh yeah, I remember that person. So it's unraveling all the time. All the time.
Yeah. I always think about things and just where, 5 years ago, I don't think I would have ever had a conversation like this, just because of like what you said earlier. Like, oh, some people would view it as being out there or hokey, or even when I said weird. And even 10 years ago, being in college and having this whole college kind of narrative aspect of life, just be the party kid, go to class, get your degree, whatever. But now it's just that, I didn't expect the way this conversation was going to go tonight, just because, like I said, I had some talking points, and I didn't take a full deep dive just because I want my curiosity to spark as we talk, rather than just me already know everything that you're going to say. And but it's more accepting and like, and I, and I feel like I've changed as a person just because it's like I said earlier, it's a different way of thinking rather than just saying, hey, I have all the answers. I know what's going to happen in life. But it's just like, hey, man, it's okay to, think about things and reflect on them. And even like you talking about meditation, 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, maybe even a few years ago, like it's like, oh, I don't meditate. That doesn't work or whatever. But I try to incorporate that, not as much as I should be, but I've been trying to incorporate forms of it. Like, I know you said you sit quietly, but I like to just go for a quiet walk. And yeah, and even sometimes I go sit down somewhere like on steps or a bench and just, hey, this is my form of it. And even go for a drive and just turn the radio off and and I know a lot of people are probably like, oh, you shouldn't drive just because you got to think about everything. And, people drive or, just people, you got to be aware if you're driving, of course, and being safe. But for some reason that relaxes me and it gets me into a different state of mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's where
and I love that because it echoes my point even further of what your interpretation to this word meditation is.
Mhm.
Just as an interpretation of what karma is or spirituality is it skewed by a seeded thought from when you was in high school or when you was in grade school or something?
Yes.
But look at what that means. What does that word interpret for you? And then unraveling it rather than going, okay, yeah, I don't meditate, but I used to go for walks and going to sit on, sit on a step. But so that's your form of meditation.
Yeah.
It's just a different
And that's another thing that I would have never thought that like, that's my form of meditation where that based on the social narrative or cultural narratives, I guess, is when you say meditate, you have to go sit into a dark room by yourself on a mat, cross your legs and, sit like this. And like, I used to think, oh, that's what it was. But, opening up my brain a little bit and my eyes, like, oh yeah, she's onto something. Like, that's cool. Like she's saying like, yeah, this is your form. And like, if it's healing, if it's helping you, if it's even just de-stressing you for a few minutes out of your day, it's just like, if just the wheels are turning and all of a sudden you just go like, just breathe,
Right.
Yeah. And
That's
like, okay,
it.
it's like, this is it. This is it. Like, it's not what people say it has to be. It's a different way. So, but,
Exactly.
and going through when did you know you wanted to become a mentor or a teacher or just a guide, I guess, in general, knowing that, hey, like, did you have a certain instant in your life where you helped somebody and you're like, hey, I want to start doing this more?
So throughout most of my life, I'm not unique to this. We've all had challenges in life.
Yes.
All of us. How we choose to navigate them is our choice, be it through accessibility, knowledge, or support, whatever. I've had my fair share, and I've chosen the spiritual route in many forms to look for resolve. And I've been doing that for the better part of, yikes, a whole bunch of 20 plus years, if not more. And because I've strengthened that muscle of how to heal a process and how to heal through and go through an experience and heal it for myself, but also for the people around me and my ancestors and my lineage and the other parts of myself that I've had incarnated on this planet. I've been doing this work for 20 odd years, if not longer, for myself.
That's impressive.
It's humbling to say. It really is.
Yes.
So then I'm in a place of going, well, I know I've had dialogues and conversations with other people saying, okay, you've kind of, oh, I went through that. I know how to help you with that. And it just evolved from there until I got to the point of my higher self, my guides said, you need to quit what you're doing, corporate life.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't need to do any more of that. We need you to work on this side of the realm. So then I stopped all of that and listened to that higher calling and stepped into it.
What was the corporate life like for you at the
It
time?
was
Were you suffering in silence? Like, oh, I don't need to be here. I want to be out doing my thing. I mean, or was this like a place to start or?
I didn't know what my thing was.
Mm,
All I knew is when I was in corporate life, it wasn't fitting. It was, what's the analogy? Square peg in a round hole.
yes.
And I kept doing it over and over again because I'm like, no, this is what life is about. This is what my environment is. I got a degree, I got higher education, I got all of that. To not do this, come on. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm meant to be working in corporate. I'm meant to be doing marketing strategies and business development and events and PR
Hmm.
and all that stuff. But then I kept trying. I kept getting a knock on the head. But those knocks on the head got louder and louder until it come to not just one point, but as they got louder, you really sit back. Perhaps that moment of me sitting on the stairs, just like when you do,
Yes.
going, "Oh my gosh, this is not working. What am I supposed to do?"
So you initially were going down the actual structure road of college, get
Yeah,
a job,
yeah.
work for X amount of years, retire, and go from there.
I worked in corporate for 15 years.
Okay. And so that was your like initially in those 15 years you thought that was a way to go until
Yeah,
those knocks on the head was the final straw.
I
Yeah.
worked in corporate for 15 years, and I was a freelancer and a consultant for many of those years. So the biggest shift for me was becoming an entrepreneur, being self-employed, fit with me way better than being an employee.
Mhm. Was
100%. It was like night and day.
was that scary for you to make that jump to say because you come from having a steady paycheck and then you're like, okay, I'm going out on my own here. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know where am I going to get my money or what people normally would think about like
That's right.
and that's what a lot of people are afraid to take these jumps and these to pursue their passions, I guess, because of all those things. Just like, okay, how am I going to support my family? Where do I get my money? How can I eat? What is my family going to think? What is my friends going to think?
Right.
Is this going to be a huge fire or will this be the greatest thing ever? I mean, just
Right.
yeah. I mean, just did you have any of those thoughts, or you just like, I'm good to go. I know what I'm doing. I got a plan. It's going to happen. I'm good to go.
I think it's with the environment that we live in, it's human nature for us to all have those thoughts.
Sure.
I had those thoughts. I didn't know how I was going to live. I was blessed to be in a relationship where I was supported for a little while.
Good.
But then I had to be in a place of, okay, you got to figure this out. You got to either sink or you're going to swim.
Nice.
And the swim for me was I'm leaning into this higher power, this God, faith, universal source, and say, okay, you want me to do this? Show me. Show me the path. I'm looking, observing. I'm being very aware of the signs, the signals, the people, the conversations that are showing up in my life. I'm watching. Show me, make it clear, and make it loud so I don't miss it.
Mm. And did you
And
get it?
one thing after another, absolutely.
What was it? Do you remember?
Well, there were many of them.
Oh,
Many of them from an opportunity came up for a contract, um, going to a networking event and meeting different people who then domino into other relationships. I'm sure you've had it, or we've all had it, where we meet one person, go, had I not met that person, I might have not met that person, and this wouldn't happen, and that wouldn't have happened.
yes.
Like it spreads, right?
Yeah. And and being by myself and having conversations with myself and just, doing my reflections and thinking and just saying like, "Hey, maybe I want this to happen in my life," or maybe I don't know, just something to that nature. And I don't want to get too specific, but it's that, and then it does happen, and you're like, "Wow." Like, oh shit, that this is here. Like, I never would have thought of that. And just like, and then that's when, again, it's one of those things that occurs to me like, wait, is this the sign? Is this, or is this just a coincidence that I was just thinking about that, a week ago? And I guess where I'm picking that up, what is that? It's called like the frequency of bias or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, I would probably say synchronicity.
Okay. I don't remember the exact term, but it's basically like if you see a red car, if you never see red cars driving,
Right.
yeah, and then one day you buy a red
Right.
car, and then you see them
That's
everywhere.
all you see.
Exactly, and I guess that's kinda what I was getting at, was like, was that just because I had that thought, or is this just because this was where this is like a sign, this is meant to be, this is me for to take this opportunity, or this is me
Right.
for to go explore this relationship or
Right.
whatever. Yeah.
So I would say there are a couple of things that I want to add into that. One is follow the feeling.
Ooh.
So when you're in a place of uncertainty and you don't know, do I go this route or do I go this route? And for me, when I was working in corporate, it wasn't a great feeling for me to follow, but I was doing it because I was told to do it from up here,
Understand.
right? So then when I moved and watched these synchronicities that you're talking about kind of fall into play and following that feeling, so my feelings become my navigator.
Okay.
So add on to the point of you thinking, oh my gosh, did I just create this red car in my life? Did I create it? Did it really happen? So when you originally may have thought it, you tapped into a feeling.
Mm.
So when you activate that feeling and you give it energy, it amplifies.
Mm.
And when it amplifies, it then ripples out. And what we know for sure is what we put out, we will get back.
You're correct about that.
That's the universal law, right?
Yes, and that was one of those things too. I used to think that was very hokey, and I guess before these past 5 years, and just that because there was a movie I used to watch, and that was and they would say one of the sayings on it was like, "If you believe you deserve it, the universe will serve it," or something like that.
Mm.
And everybody would look at it for saying it like, "Come on, man, like what the hell? That's stupid," or whatever. But again, it's like these signs or these little opportunities or just whatever you want us to call them. Just what happened is like, there's something to this, man. Like, there's no way. Like, what are the chances? And then even when having personal conversations with my friends, and like this kind of one something happened to them along those lines. Like, all right, so for example, a few years ago, one of my best friends, shout out Chad, that he told me he was going to marry this girl, and he did not even talk to her. Now they're
Mm.
happily married. A few years
Mhm.
later, and I was like, wow, like, and I thought when he said that, I was like, Chad, come on, that's a straight bro talk. I mean, come on, man. That's like, it seems like something you would see in a love romantic
Okay.
movie, whatever it's called, romantic
Right.
comedy, rom-com.
Yeah. Okay.
But it really happened. I was in a wedding. I was like, and we even talk about it to this day. And I was like,
Do you?
right, and I remember the exact day we had that conversation, like, it happened, and
Nice.
it's like, yeah, something like that. It's like, wow, this is so
Yeah.
cool. And
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but that's my
That's
point.
okay.
That was awesome.
So to amplify that and to solidify that as not to be weird.
Mhm.
When you walk into a room and you feel the vibe of the room, be it buzzing or not, you feel it as soon as you walk in.
Yes.
That is energy, that is frequency, that is vibration.
Mm.
So when your friend met his partner, there was a frequency, there was a vibration, there was an energy that was emitted, and I'm gonna share that it was more the probability of it being a connection from a soul contract.
Mm.
So
Okay.
their souls would have said, all right, when we get here, here, and here, this is what's going to happen, right? So that's when you can recognize when you walk into a room and you feel something or you see somebody and like instantly you just connect.
Yeah, it's almost like
There's
you're
a
just drawn
deep,
to 'em, Right.
There's a deeper underlaying of something else is navigating this or orchestrating this.
Yeah. And stuff like that makes me wonder too, is just because, like without having this podcast and without having the internet and whatever, you and I would have most
No.
likely, I mean, based on odds and
Yeah.
statistics and everything else, you and I would have never met through life,
Right.
especially you being in Toronto and me being, I don't know how far Virginia is from Toronto, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty
It's
far.
fun.
But and even having like these conversations, like, I didn't know who you were besides our emails or whatever we exchanged before this. And it's like,
Mhm.
it kind of freaks me out. Like, I have no idea how this conversation is going to go just because I'm either just doing some small research based on what you sent me or whatever. And then it's just that, wow, our paths have crossed. And like, what made them cross? I mean, is it just that were we drawn to have this conversation? Was there just this energy, this effect that you were talking about, just this
Yeah.
expanded out and finally, what's today's date? The 10th was our time to cross paths? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's exciting and it's, just
It is.
what gets my brain going about stuff like this and just wonders,
It is.
And it's cool.
And that's also the power of intention.
Ooh. Okay. What do you mean by the power of intention?
So we intend to do certain things in life, right?
Sure. Well,
You intend to go to work, you intend to get a job, your friend intends to marry this woman.
yes.
When we look at it as a vibrational frequency level. So
Mm,
for me, my intentions with the work that I do is to spread this message to as many people who are ready to hear it.
mm.
So perhaps you picked up, or somehow we were connected to that intention.
Yeah. And that's what I see what you're saying now. Okay.
It's all energy, right? A
Yeah.
thought has a vibrational frequency.
Mm. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sometimes it takes me a minute, but the way you said that really perfectly. Yeah, now it's come around for me. It's like, hey, I get it now. So cool. I think it's a good way to take this podcast home right there on that.
Love
Um,
it.
cool. Well, thanks for doing this. This was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I know I have a ton more questions and more things we could explore, but maybe for another date and time we can do that.
Absolutely. I'm
Um,
here.
if you want to plug yourself or if you want people to find you and all that good stuff,
Sure.
how do they do that?
So they can find me at brightshininglight.com is the website, and they're welcome to book a 30-minute consult and figure out if I'm the right fit to support them with whatever life is presenting them. I'm also on LinkedIn and under Naranjan Nota. I'm under Instagram at Naranjan Nota and Facebook. But I also have a podcast as well called
Nice.
Master of Your Crafts. We should
Nice.
talk about that, Chris. So,
um,
yeah.
and then I guess a good question. Do you find there's some people that you sync really well with and others that you just don't mesh well with at all?
Not
Kind of,
really.
oh,
Not really.
yeah, okay. I was just wondering about that when you said that if you think we're a good fit. And I was just wondering if you've ever had people who come up and just like, no, I don't, I'm going to find somebody else that
It
is my plan.
only if my intentions haven't been clear
Hmm.
when I put out a thought, an email, a request. If that's not clear, the unclarity comes back.
I got you. Well, cool. Well, any last messages or anything you want to give out or share for the world? I know that's what you said, or you get.
Well, they're happy to book a free consult. I do also have a gratitude journal that I would love people to engage with if they choose to. It's a daily gratitude journal. It's called See Your Light. You can see it all on my website. And I'm hosting programs and I have a group program, or should I say a sacred space for individuals to come and heal together. But I also offer one-on-one deep dive healing, and we get to the root cause issues of what's going on and unpeel those layers. So thank you, Chris, for having me on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Like I said, I would love to explore some other things somewhere down the road, and we'll do it again for sure. So, okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Good night, everybody.